Assalamu alaikum and a very pleasant morning, girls. Today we are going to see an analysis of the glass menagerie. Okay, an analysis of the glass menagerie. Sweet smell of success. Here, when Tennessee Williams' poetic drama, The Glass Menagerie, opened in New York in the year 1945, a new epoch in the history of Western theatre unfurled. For with this play, Williams seemed to succeed. O'Neill, as the chief architect of form in the American drama. Okay, because of this play, he got success. Okay, in the theatre. The play ran for a year and a half at the Playhouse Theatre, New York, with a total of 563 performances. It won for the young playwright the New York Drama Critics Circle Award as the best American play of the season. He got a Circle Award as the best American play of the season. It ran a year and a half at the Playhouse Theatre. Okay, he got fame because of his play. He succeeded. It also won the Sidney Howard Memorial Award, presented by the Playwrights Company, and the 4th annual award of the Catholic Monthly, The Sign. Is that clear, ma? Okay, sweet smell of success. It means that Tennessee Williams, because of this play, because of this drama, he got fame. He has succeeded. Okay, he got many awards for his play. That is called sweet smell of success. Is it clear, ma? Can you get my points? Okay. Okay, girls. Then the play, a mirror of human experience in depth and clarity. This play is a mirror of human experiences in depth and clarity. The Glass Menagerie is the purest work to come from the pen of Tennessee Williams. Here in this play, he shows the reality of life of a common man, okay, a middle class family. And in this play, in this play, that is in the Glass Menagerie, he mentioned those characters, that is the three characters in the family, right? That is Amanda, Tom, and Laura. They don't want to realize, or they don't want to accept the reality. Is that clear, ma? Yes or no? Okay, so it is a human experience in depth and clarity. It is a purest work. It is a purest work from the pen of Tennessee Williams. He has shown everything. What are all the struggles? What are all the things the family members are facing in their life? Okay, in each and every character, he has written very crystal clear. He has written. Okay, in form, it is the essence of simplicity. A narrator who also plays one of the four characters sets the story in time and locale. That is Tom, who plays dual character, that is as well as a narrator and also a character in the play, right? Then all four of the character proceeds to transfigure some mournful facts of life into a moving poem. The material is also pure and simple. Nothing happens except that a mother makes an unsuccessful attempt to find a suitor for her daughter. But the writing is so tender, the sympathies are so merciful, the insight into character is so penetrating, the indifference of a great world outside is so skillfully suggested in the background that the glass menagerie mirrors human experience in depth and clarity. Is it clear, ma? Okay. Although it is a fragile as the glass toys that the lonely daughter consoles herself with, it has the supple strength of truth. Nothing about it is false or contrived. Nothing is obscure or irrelevant. Is it clear? Okay. The play, a study of frustration. The Glass Menagerie is a study of frustration because each and every character shows their frustration, shows their depression, shows their not liking the world, that present thing. Okay. Narrated through a boy's recollection of his family, that is, in his memory only, the play starts. Its characters are the mother, Amanda Wingfield, a fading Southern belle whose husband abandoned her and the family years ago. Then daughter Laura, who is crippled in body and withdrawn from the world in a spirit. Son Tom, an aspiring poet who is frustrated in his routine job at the factory. And the gentleman caller Jim O'Connor. Okay. As the play opens, Tom, dressed as a merchant seaman, emerges from the darkness, strolls across the stage toward the fire escape entrance of his remembered home. He is the narrator now, addressing the audience in the violation of the realistic fourth wall tradition. He is going to narrate the story of his family, colored by the mood of dreamy reminiscence. Reminiscence, that is a recollection of past. Is it clear, ma? Okay. Then the employment of a single recurring musical theme. The story takes place in the sun's, that is Tom's mind long after the events occurred. That is, in the opening scene, we have seen that Tom comes and says that he is the narrator as well as a character, and he says from his memory. The story is about his from his memory. Okay. And as a Tom, the narrator says, memory always seems to move in music. And thus, a single recurring musical theme is used to give emotional emphasis throughout the play. For example, in we have seen in dramas, right, like daily soaps, that is the serials, where when they want to show their emotions, represent their emotion, they will play background music. Yes or no? With that music, we also flow from that music. We also get emotion by hearing that music, right? Like that, here also music plays an important role. Is it clear? Between episode and the next, it appears to underscores the emotion, nostalgia, which is basic to the play. It is primarily Laura's music, explained Williams in his production notes for this play, and therefore comes out most clearly when the play focuses upon her and the lovely fragility of glass, which is her image. In keeping with the atmosphere of the play, the lighting is dim and not too realistic. The setting is designed to capture the mood of gentle frustration and nostalgia expressed by the mother, Amanda, and the daughter, Laura. Okay, here we can, by hearing the music, we can come to know what is going on, the situation in the family. Okay, how they are frustrated. Here it is a presentation of Amanda and daughter Laura. Is it clear? Okay. The Glass Menagerie, a memory play. How it is? Okay. Tom announces to the audience. Yes, in the first scene, in the opening scene, he announces that to the audience. Yes, I have trick in my pocket. I have things up my sleeve. But I am the opposite of a stage magician. He gives you illusion that has the appearance of truth. I give you the truth in the pleasant disguise of illusion. After setting the depression period as the social background for the play, Tom tells the audience that they will now see a memory play. That is, in reality, they are struggling a lot. Okay, they don't want to face the world, right? Yes or no? Now, he says that we will see a memory play. William meant more accurately reve, which for the playwright implies that the small events of a small importance in themselves are recalled, relieved, and treasured because they serve to symbolize and heighten basic experiences. Is that clear, ma? Can you get my points? Okay, then hopeless plight of Laura and Amanda. The play revolves around the introversion of Laura, who, because of a the crippled state and futility of her earlier passion for a fellow high school student, Jim O'Connor, is now psychologically withdrawn from life. Mother Amanda is a strong yet pathetic character living in a world of sentimental illusion. If she accepted the alley apartment in St. Louis at this real value with its darkness and absence of hope, she would perish. Lost in the past, she regularly recalls how 17 gentlemen callers came to see her in one afternoon in Mississippi and how she could have married a number of men who later turned out to be successful. Instead, she married a genial, carefree man who, working for the telephone company, fell in love with long distance and sent back a picture postcard from the Pacific coast of Mexico after he abandoned the family, saying hello, goodbye, without specifying his address. His picture on the metal piece reveals a man who is gallantly smiling ineluctably. Smiling as if to say, I will be smiling forever. The only thing he had, according to Amanda's version, was plenty of charm. The humble tenement environment to which she and her family are now reduced frames the hopelessness of Amanda's existence. They are far from the highly cultivated soil of the South as they are transplanted to a northern urban area. That is, in this thing, it is represented as Laura is no more living in the world. Once she had a crush on Jim O'Connor in the high school. After she dropped out from the school and as well as in the business college, she don't want to do anything. She want to be with only her glass menagerie. Okay, and Amanda is a generous, kind, and good person, but because of her past, she's not accepting the truth. That is, she's not living in the present. Always daily basis she used to call her Blue Mountain, that is Mississippi. One afternoon she had 19 scholar, that is 19 gentlemen callers to came to see, and Amanda has chosen only Wingfield, and Wingfield was went somewhere without informing to his family. Only he sends postcards saying hello and goodbye without specifying the address. Is that clear? Now they are in the St. Louis apartment alley. Is it clear? Then Lara, a failure. Amanda, whose aim is to find a likely suitor for Laura, helps her daughter secure a business education As it later develops, Laura enrolls in a business education. As it later develops, Laura enrolls in a business school but unable to face the realities of life because violently ill when she takes her first examination. She leaves the school and never returns, but does not tell her mother this. Every day, while her mother thinks she is at school, Laura walks in the park, visits the botanical gardens, and sometimes even goes without lunch in order to use her allowances to go to the movies. Okay, here Laura's failure. Amanda, who aims, that is, she wants her daughter to be married to a good person, but it fails because her daughter is disabled, and but Amanda doesn't think that she is but Amanda tells her that to Laura to be like a normal person, but Laura is not at all listening her, and because of her shyness, because of her inability to pass the first examination, what happens? She leaves college. Also, she is dropped out from the school. Yes or no? And she leaves the school and never returns. But here she does not tell her mother this. Every day she goes to school as if she's going to school, but without going to school, what she does, she walks in the park, visits botanical gardens, sometimes even goes to the movie without having lunch. Is it clear? Okay. Then Laura's utter disappointment. The climax of the play is reached when Tom is finally persuaded to bring a nice young man home from the factory who might prove an eligible groom for Laura. The gentleman caller is Jim O'Connor, the student for whom Laura nurtured a secret passion without his knowing. He becomes friendly with Laura and succeeds in breaking her reserve. He even gets her to dance and is surprised to learn that Laura knows about his talent at school. Finally, Laura shows him her glass menagerie, her collection of fragile glass animals that she so treasures and which are her escape world, to which she flees when the real world proves too much for her. When the young man breaks the horn of the unicorn, the one element that had made it unique, she is not disturbed. Symbolically, her calm reaction represents her desire now to become a normal person and no longer remain a unique individual apart from others. Is that clear? Can you get my points, girls? The gentleman caller, Jim, interest in her and his ability to break through her reserve and the defense which he has set up bring her a moment of retrieved or newly found elation. Shortly therefore, as the gentleman caller is about to leave, Laura's mother Amanda requests him to come back soon for other good times, but Jim turns down the suggestion, explaining that he is engaged to another girl and is planning to be married soon. At this point, he jointly leaves. Laura relapses into her former dream world. Now, what happens? Laura's utter disappointment when she comes to know that Tom is finally persuaded a young gentleman caller whose name is Jim O'Connor, whom he had, that is, Laura had a crush in the school time. When she comes to know, at first she becomes very nervous to meet Jim. Okay, and after that, after having dinner with the family, Jim comes to Laura and comforts her. Okay, by talking to her, and he wills the confidence in Laura, and Laura also gains the confidence. Okay, now what happens after some time? They are dancing. And what happens? The unicorn falls from the table and breaks down. That is broke. The horn is broken now, and the unicorn is not unique now. It represents she is not becoming angry or upset at that time. It represents symbolically that Laura is also want to mingle with the world, mingle with everyone. Yes or no? Because she don't want to be an individual. Okay, apart from the world. Is it clear? She is gaining that thing, and after at the end of the play, what happens? James leaves, and Amanda asks him to come back again. That time he says that he was engaged to another girl and he is not able to return. And what happens? Laura again relapses. That is, she goes to her former dream world. That is to the glass menagerie. Is that clear? Altercation between mother and son. That is the relationship between that is Amanda and Tom. What they are doing? Always they are quarreling between one another. Amanda scolds her son Tom for having brought a young man who was already engaged to some other girl, and she deplores wasteful preparation and expenses they have to incur in entertaining an unwanted visitor. Tom explains in a frustration tone that he works in a warehouse and not in a place where he can know things about people. Amanda accuses him as one who does not know things anywhere, for he always lives in a dream world that manufactures illusions. Offered by his mother's word, Tom declares that he will go to his own dream world, the movies. Amanda accuses him further, saying that in addition to his having them, made them all fools by bringing his useless visitor, he offers to let his mother and helpless sister down by running away from his responsibility towards them. But Tom tells her, "All right, I will. The more you shout about my selfishness to me, the quicker I will go, and I won't go to the movies." The play, a minor masterpiece, that is, a deeply sensitive characterization, a mood of nostalgia and gentle frustration woven by Williams. A lyrical gift for words, an emotional shipwreck of three sensitive people, all add up to make this tender play a minor masterpiece. Was it clear, ma? Okay, then an autobiographical play with Laurentine influence. William's compelling portrait of Amanda. That is, William's compelling portrait of Amanda is one of the most compelling and honest portraits that his character that has ever drawn. If it is not a factual likeness of the playwright's mother, as he reports that she was when she first viewed Lured Taylor performance, it is nevertheless an unerring emotional portrait drawn with amazing candor and with great objectivity. Is it clear? Is the play a tragedy? Can you think, girls, it is a play of tragedy? Okay, let me explain you. The Glass Menagerie presents a tragic situation and characters that, in spite of their moodiness and foolishness and self-deception, possess a sense of tragic. With the sole exception of Laura, they are intensely genuine, and the destruction of their dreams and aspiration bears the illusion of great importance. But the play is not a tragedy. The play is not a tragedy. The universe of the Glass Menagerie does not allow tragedy. Everyone in the play is a failure, and in the course of the drama, they all perish a little. Amanda, the most heroic of the quartet, is pitiful but not tragic, because from the outset she is doomed to failure despite her desperate struggle to set right things. None of these plays are given the opportunity to triumph against a fate which is as malignant as it is implacable. This struggle is a rear guard action against life, a continuous retreat. This retreat may be moving, pathetic, melodramatic, or boisterous, but it is always a withdrawal. Portrait and Menagerie compared. The Glass Menagerie combines Williams' two archetypal actions. The climax of outer play is the spoiled occasion. The climax of the inner play is the eviction or loss of home. Laura does not sit at table with Jim, the gentleman caller, having declined his hostess offer to Lemonade, leaves early to meet his fiancée. After all, the preparation, Amanda's party is ruined. Tom's curtain speech reminds us that everything has happened with his memory, and we may be secure that it will do so again and again, whether the two bells, one faded, one never having bloomed. That is Amanda and Laura. One is faded and one never having bloomed. Managed to keep their home after his departure, we can only guess what it is clear that the wanderer has none apart from them. In the play's last moments, Tom's two roles, narrator and participant, closeness. Dressed as a merchant seaman, the one who broke fire to seek adventure, stands before the audience and admits that he is a haunted fugitive. He calls out to Laura that he has tried but not been able to forget her. The many cities to which he has sailed seem to sweep about him like dead leaves, torn loose from their branches. A strain of familiar music, a display of perfumes in a store window, or simply a fragment of transparent glass is enough to remind him of what he has lost. Upstage, behind the gauze screen, which marks the outside wall of the St. Louis tenement that was once his home, the mother and sister he left behind enact a scene without words, like silent ghosts, visible only to the eye of memory, still facing the audience. He tells Laura to blow the candles that light the dim interior. She does so. He says goodbye, but on exit, the elusive, nostalgic music that has dipped in and out of the scenes from the beginning breaks off without resolution. Tom's climactic realization, that is, Tom's climatic realization that he will play out his memory play for the rest of his days, is like the epiphany in a short story by James Joyce. His confession throws all of the events that have preceded it into a different light, or more precisely, it casts them into a greater elegiac darkness. That is, at the end of the play, we come to know that it is not a tragedy. Actually, it is not a tragic play. Everyone met with their fate, or everyone met with their end. That is, they are not satisfied with their life. One is not able to focus on the world, or one is not able to understand the reality, and the one is very selfish. Even though Tom is responsible, he is selfish, right? Yes or no? The whole thing ends up after the Jim O'Connor leaves the home, and the three characters remains silent. Amanda shows her anger or quarrels with Tom, and Tom leaves the home, and Laura remains silent. Amanda takes care of Laura, and after it all, by saying goodbye, Tom says to Laura that to blow off the candle, to dim the lightness. Is it clear? Yes or no, girls? Okay. But this is the end of the play, girls. If you have any doubts, please do comment in the Google Classroom. Okay, surely I'll clarify your doubts. Okay, girls, thank you. Take care. Bye bye. Allah Hafiz.